Welcome back, Richard. It's terrific to see you again.
You sound enthused this morning. What's wrong?
Well, it's November. There's the holidays coming, and there's just more stuff to do than there are minutes of the day.
It's that time of year, isn't it?
Yes.
Where things really accelerate. So
Yeah,
here we are, almost to mid-November.
Yeah. My wife and I were shopping yesterday, so it's the second weekend of November, and there were Christmas things out, and it was holiday playing already. It's unreal.
People seem to be doing it early. A lot. As you drive around, people have Christmas trees are up in homes, and lights are the lights are up and everything. And I thought, ooh, this is earlier than I remember it. So yeah, it seems to be happening earlier and earlier, even in homes. Stores start this in July or August, but but people are getting ready for the holiday. So
yes, a stark reminder that we are approaching.
Here we are. Yeah.
Today on the podcast, we are going to talk about an issue that we focus on here a lot in our practice, because both of us do a lot of couples work. We do a lot of marriage counseling. We are always interested in learning more about the dynamics of relationships. And, we kind of recently came across this idea of, not that we haven't read about it before, but it reminded us of these stages of marriage. And so we thought we would talk about the stages of marriage a little bit today.
Right. Yeah, it's something we spend a considerable amount of time in the practice working on, as you say, family law and marriage and couples therapy. But also, what brought this to the fore in my case was friends and family members who are recently married or remarried.
Right.
And each time I go to one of these weddings, I'm reminded of what can be in a relationship. My son recently married for the first time, and big event, and I've talked to him about not giving him advice. I'm not going to give him any advice about his marriage. But when you talk about marriage, and you and I both know that marriage is a dynamic process. It's a movie, not a picture. It's not a snapshot.
Right.
It's a moving, dynamic, ever-changing set of circumstances. And so we thought, well, let's take a look at this. And so we went back to this idea and took another look at the whole idea of something called the stages of marriage. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And different writers have different numbers. Some say it's 3 stages, and some say it's 7 stages, and 4, 5, or 6 stages, which really doesn't matter. The idea is that a marriage is a dynamic process, and each stage needs to be managed. And
absolutely.
And if you understand each stage, it makes it easier for you to manage what's going on in that stage.
Absolutely. And there are at least 3, as you said, and but there's these sort of global periods. We could call those the epochs of marriage. And then we have these individual stages that sort of scatter across the 3. But most relationships start with this idea of romantic love, and it's this sort of period of infatuation, and they're just enamored with each other. And this is the time when people talk about sort of love being blind, and it's a time when you overlook each other's shortcomings, or what we'll later refer to as flaws, and you go through that period of romantic love, and everything is wonderful, and everything is nothing is so insurmountable that it can't be fixed with this love. That romantic love doesn't last for too long,
right?
And then it gets into these other periods where you start to become a little bit disillusioned, and you start to see each other in ways that maybe you didn't before. And so we're going to talk about some of these different stages that happen along the way, some of which most people have heard of, but others that we just want people to consider because, it's not that every relationship, every marriage is doomed for failure. However, I like to think of marriages as sort of an evolution. We all change over time, and I think that a lot of times what happens is people sort of go into marriage with this idea that, well, it's just going to stay the same. I'm going to feel exactly the same as I do right now, and I'm going to feel this way for the rest of my life. And when you go into it with that sort of misconception, it's going to breed problems, and you're going to have issues.
Yeah, I like the way you talk about the epics. There's this sort of like a 3-act play with marriage. The first act is the romantic stage, romantic love. The second is you start to get disillusioned, but you also get distracted because now you have children and jobs and you're building houses and buying stuff and celebrating holidays. And then there's the third large stage, which is the dissolution. You don't dissolve it, but you either adjust with resignation, say, okay, we've been together 40 years, so let's just stay, or you adjust with contentment. And what we hope that in the last stage, that you adjust with contentment. But if you think of marriage in 3 big parts, it's romantic love, disillusion and distraction, and adjustment. In that final stage is adjustment. But within each of those, there are sort of sub chapters, so if you think there's 3 large sections, but within each 3, there are these little, also little periods, shorter periods where important things are happening.
Right. Absolutely. And so, regardless of what stage you're in, one of the things that we often consider is marital satisfaction. How do you feel about the marriage? How satisfied are you with your marriage? And I think that part of this is the idea of needs. When I work with couples, one of the big things I talk to them about is how each of them are meeting the other's needs. And the challenge is that when you have a partner and that partner isn't meeting your needs, well, if we have a need that needs to be met, then we find some way to meet that need. And that is one of the things that often leads to significant problems and makes people very dissatisfied with their relationship. And so, we think about marital satisfaction as an instrument or as a tool or as a perspective that is really important. It doesn't have, and I think people sometimes have a hard time with this. It has nothing to do with reality. It's really a perception. If you feel as though your partner has your back no matter what, there may have never been anything in the marriage where your partner has had to have your back. But as long as you believe that they have your back and that they're always there to support you, that's fantastic.
Right.
If you know that you're having a problem with somebody at work, that your spouse or your partner is going to be there to support you and to be there for whatever decision you make, that can be tremendous satisfaction. Again, it may have never happened. It doesn't have to have happened, but as long as you believe it, it's going to help you be more satisfied with that relationship.
Right. That's right. And so if you want to check the status of your marriage, you could take this. It's a very simple, well, it's not, it can be simple, this marital satisfaction scale. And I think it'll be in the show notes, right?
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
So you could go to the show notes, or you could go to the article and get these. It has 15 items, and it sort of makes you think about each of these things and how your marital satisfaction is at any particular point. And it's things like, I'm happy, like one of the questions, I'm happy about our commitment and feel that my partner understands me. Okay, so then you give that some thought. Our relationship is a success. Right. And so you look at these items and say, okay, where am I? How do I grade myself? There's no point scale, but it's just sort of, you think about these things and say, yes, I am, or no, I'm not satisfied with my marriage. So you can take a look at that. It's sort of fun to do, but it's also informative.
Absolutely. And I really like, as you go through those questions, I like what you said a minute ago about this idea of pictures versus movies. You might fill out that marital satisfaction
Right.
scale, and recognize that that's a snapshot of where you are right now.
Right.
But then you can look at it again in 6 months, a year,
Yeah.
5 years, and everything may be different. You go
Exactly.
through these periods of time, and that's why we think of relationships as evolving,
Mhm.
because with everything that you go through personally
Right.
has an influence and an effect on your relationship as a couple, or as a partnership. And if your partnership doesn't evolve, it's going to affect the satisfaction. And so it evolves and changes and moves over a period of time. And so we like to think of marriage as a movie, as opposed to just these snapshots. But the snapshots can give you some good information about where you are right now.
That's right. Because if you take the marital satisfaction scale at year 4, you might get one perspective, one score. If you take the same scale at year 15, you might get a very different score. And so we would encourage you to repeat the process over time to see where you are in a particular stage. This is your score in stage 1, but this might be your score in stage 5. You
Right.
have
Richard, how many times have you talked to a couple and they say everything was great, and then right after we got married, everything changed,
right, right,
right? And it's because views change, expectations change, needs change, everything changes very quickly.
right.
And when things change, you either adapt or you don't adapt, and go
You
from
just
there.
gave me a thought. Let's say you live together for 5 years. Okay. You get married in year 6.
Yeah,
Well, guess what? You're not in stage 1.
right,
You're in stage 2 or 3.
right,
And you're bumping up to the 7-year itch.
right,
So it's not the marriage. It's not the marriage that caused the problem. It
right.
was that you happened to get married
Mm-hmm.
in the 7th year of your relationship.
Yeah,
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 that's true.
yeah.
Let's take a look at these 7 stages and explain each one,
Yeah,
and see what we can do to help you get through each one.
absolutely. So stage one, I'm going to say obviously, is called the honeymoon stage, and this is usually the first couple of years, first 1 to 3 years or so of the. And I like what you said, the relationship, not necessarily the marriage, but the first 1 to 3 years of the relationship. And this is again that romantic love. This falls very nicely at the same time as romantic love, where everything is wonderful. Um, you see all the little idiosyncratic little tendencies of your partner. They're cute. They're little quirks. They're
Right.
wonderful. And those tend to become the things that drive you crazy later.
Right.
But those are those nice little things, because this is just that time period where everything is rose-colored glasses.
Exactly. There's 2 big things that happen in stage 1. One is that you overlook your partner's faults, or you accept them, or you think they're cute, or this is sort of adorable that you do this. So one is you accept those. It's not that you overlook them, that you don't realize they're there. You accept them as quirks. Okay. The second thing is, in this first phase, and I want to put this as delicately as I can, you're going to do your best to propagate the species.
Right.
That's why you're together. And we would say enjoy this while you can. This is the period of physical intimacy, probably the best, maybe the best it ever is. It's certainly the most passionate that it ever is. It's in this phase. And you need to enjoy that while it's there, but you also need to do what you can to sustain it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because as everybody knows, over time, that starts to evaporate, and that can create enormous problems in later stages of a relationship. So yes, it's intense. The physical intimacy is intense, but it doesn't need to, those flames don't necessarily need to burn out. So
Right.
you need to do your best to hang on to those.
Right, absolutely. And so after the honeymoon phase, so after that first 1 to 3 years or so, then you travel to the moon, and now you're coming back to Earth.
In stage 2, you're coming back to Earth.
That's right. So for stage 2, you're coming back to Earth, and this is within the first 3 to 5 years or so. And this is where you really start to see the true self, the true other person that you're in the partnership with. And, you know, again, anyone can do that romantic love, that honeymoon stage, because it really is a time of where you're not, you know, you're intoxicated with oxytocin, and you're not seeing things exactly the way that they are. And so by the time that starts to wear down and you're coming back to earth, you are seeing the other person as their true self.
Right.
And again, this is when you have those, you know, you may start feeling like, what did I do? What did I get myself into?
What in the world? Right.
You're like, okay, some of that shine is kind of knocked off, and you start to see things in a little bit of a different view. Those rose-colored glasses are starting to coming off.
Right. Yeah, this is where each partner in stage 2, years 3 to 5, you begin to reveal what we call your true self. So this stuff starts to come out normal. But if you like or love your partner's true self, you know, you've been through the romantic phase, that was easy. Now you're in the second phase. If you can love your partner's true self, then you're really starting to build a strong foundation. Okay, that's what you have to look for. If you love each other for who you really are, you're going to build a bond that will withstand all the other challenges that are going to come, because it doesn't get easier. But if you can get through this phase and appreciate each other for who you are, you're going to have the foundation you need for each subsequent stage.
Right. And Rich, I think that this is so critical, and it's something that we talk to people in early stages of their relationship. You know, if we ever have the opportunity to do premarital counseling and things like that, one of the things we tell people is you need to show who your real self is as early as possible. Right. You know, you got to take some of that guardedness down, and that, you know, oh yeah, I'll do anything, no problem. You need to show who you really are early, because that's how you're going to know that by the time you get to the second stage, that you're not going to be like, wow, I really don't like this person. I really don't like who this person really is.
Right.
You know, the marriages that last are the marriages where they do like each other at the core. They like who each other is. They like, you know, we're no longer overlooking those idiosyncratic tendencies, those quirks, and we're actually being honest as far as how we evaluate that partner. And I think it's important to do that as early as possible, if you want to know sort of whether or not this relationship is going to be sustainable.
Right. Yeah. The sooner you get to true self, and because, you know, during the romantic phase, you wear makeup and you do all the things you're supposed to do. But you don't sustain that over time. Right. Okay. You're not going to keep doing that in stage 2 and 3. And so get to true self as quickly as possible, and learn to appreciate each other for your true selves. This is what I really am. And then you'll build the foundation. You're going to build that foundation in stage 2.
Absolutely. Because you have to be ready for stage 3, which is the rebellion, which always makes
exactly. You have to get ready for 3. Please know that stage 3 is there, and we all encounter it. So you use 1 and 2 to get to 3. Stage 3 is called the rebellion, and for good reason.
Right. And this is within the first 5 to 7 years. And again, these timeframes are fudgeable. They can move around. But this is where you're working up towards that idea of the 7-year itch, right? Where you're really thinking, man, what am I doing? Is this a relationship I want to be in? And this is, you know, the couple has, you know, hopefully found ways to connect and to remain connected, you know, through these initial years. But during this third stage is really when that second epoch begins of sort of, you know, we're just going to start having some disappointment, and you're going to have some questions. Some of that disillusionment is going to begin, and so it's really important that we're preparing for that during those first couple stages.
That's right. Use those first 2 stages, whether it's romantic love, physical love, true self, use those to get to 3, because in 3, stage 3 is where disappointment and resentment begin to emerge.
Right.
And we typically transform those feelings, the disappointment with the relationship, the disappointment with your partner, we transform those into anger. Okay. Right. But all we're doing is we're simply reacting to unmet expectations. We thought the honeymoon would last forever. We thought our partner was this. We assumed our partner was that. We thought it would be in this kind of a house and not that kind of a house. So if you have unmet expectations, they evolve into anger and resentment. And this is what leads to, I need to change my partner, or I need to change partners. And that's where these feelings end up, is I need to change my partner, or I need to change partners. That's the 7-year itch. There's a reason, there's a reason for every stereotype. And it's what happens. Now, again, if you can get through this stage, if you can learn to give grace and and hopefully receive it, if you can get to that point where he or she loves me, warts and all, now you've added to that foundation. Okay, you made it through this test, and now you've added another layer of strength to that basic foundation, because you've survived this very difficult transitional period.
Right. Because again, by this time, that true self has come out. You're really having had the opportunity now to see your partner in most areas and in most circumstances. It's no longer that everything at work is going wonderful. By this time, you've seen struggles in all these different areas, and how your partner handles those things, and how they treat you during those stages. And so that push and pull that happens in the relationship over periods of time. And now, I like what you said about, disappointment and resentment, because if you're not careful, that is what starts to bubble up. And you have to really work to recognize that, so that you can push it off and refrain from getting to that point, and to give each other grace, and maybe to receive grace in those times.
Yeah, hopefully both partners are love is measured by what you give, not what you receive. Hopefully both of you are receiving it, and you manage to weather this period, because that's going to get you. So you weather this period. It seems like divorce seems like a good option, but perhaps it isn't. Maybe you can fix the things that are happening at stage 3. Do repair rather than buying a new one, because the new one is probably going to become like the old one. It's typically, these stages happen in every relationship. So then you get to stage 4. Now, stage 4 is the longest period for most of us, where you're finding gratitude amid distractions. Both things are happening, and this could last 10 to 20 years. And so you've tasted the threat of separation and divorce in stage 3, but you hang in there, and you're a couple, and you accept each other as you are. But what happens here is that by this time in the relationship, you're beginning to feel safe in this place and with this person. You've weathered all those storms in the first 3 stages, and now you're starting to feel like, okay, this is my safe place. All right. And this is the stage, but this is also the stage where the biggest life changes occur. Raising children, building homes, career changes, moves.
That part is so important, because I can imagine hearing people say things now about different age, the age at which we are at these different stages of marriages. And one of the realities is that overall, the overarching average is we're getting older by the time we get married. There was a time when most people were married between the ages of 18 and 20 or so. Well, if you were married at 18, this is now you're just now getting into your 30s by the time you get to stage 4. If you don't get married until you're 30, now you're approaching 50. You're in your 40s and 50s by the time you get to this stage, and it's a very different set of circumstances. And so, many of these seem to certainly be to hold more consistently when we're talking about these stages, with people who get married at those more traditional times. But because this is the stage, as you just said, where you're formulating your career, you're buying homes, you're raising kids, and all of those things are happening now. And distractions is exactly the phrase that you have to use to characterize this time period, because everything is a distraction.
That's right.
That's why we call it empty nest. And there's a thing called empty nest syndrome. By the time that kids leave the home, it's because now all the distractions are gone and it's just the two of you again.
Right. That's right.
And
That's
what
what's
is that
coming.
like?
That's what's coming. So in stage 4, you've decided to stay together. You've made it through the 7-year itch. Now you're together. In stage 4, your relationship strengthens because together as a couple, you've accomplished all of these things.
Right.
You have built a house, you have built a career, you have raised children, you've sent them to college. This is an achievement. This is an accomplishment. Okay. And so that accomplishment, that shared accomplishment, we did it. Look what we have done
Right.
together. Again, strengthens the relationship so that it prepares you for another cliff, which is empty nest.
Right.
Because what's coming is the kids are gone, and
Mhm.
now it's just the two of you again.
Right. Yeah. And that's where we get to stage 5, which is called the reunion. And so, a lot of those distractions are less distracting. And, kids are off. You are either well established in your career, or maybe even approaching retirement or something, depending on, again, some of those age related things. But you begin to have a very different appreciation for your partner because you've gone through so much. You've as you said a moment ago, you've accomplished all these things. And so couples reach this period and they either, well, I mean, the reality is they either really celebrate and enjoy this time with each other, or they say, man, what's going on? What am I going to do now? And they decide whether they still like each other or not.
That's right. Right. Yeah, because you have to remember that you've been through this very busy time, this 10 to 20 year period. You're tired, you're worn out. So be careful. When during this reunion phase, be very careful. This is a good time, and many people are doing this now, where you have to stay fit, stay active, stay engaged, because there's still much to do in your relationship. This is no time to say, okay, I'm finished. You're not finished. There's much to do in the next 2 phases. All right.
Yeah.
So know that this is coming. Know that the reunion is coming, and it should once again bring you back together.
Right.
Because you need to prepare for stage 6, which is also one of those dangerous periods in any relationship.
Yeah.
We refer to as danger, those road signs that say dangerous curves ahead, rock slides. Be careful, because the next couple of years will once again test your relationship.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting. You see, we've seen couples where they have weathered all of this so far. They've weathered, getting married early in their adulthood. They raise kids. They establish careers. Some of which are very, high working, high achieving professionals. They send their kids off. They really even manage the reunion pretty well. But then in stage 6, again, one of the most difficult things I think in relationships is retirement. Well, now all of a sudden, he or she doesn't go away for 8 hours a day. So now they're home all day with you. And how do you handle that?
Right.
You start getting into this. At the same time, we go through these personal things of sort of a fear of missing out. We like look back at our lives and you start thinking about all those things that you wanted to do and that you haven't done yet. And you have this fear of missing out on some opportunities. And so that can either bring you together and you sort of share some of these dreams and aspirations, or it can pull you apart and you go in different directions because you want to do different things. So you
Yep.
have to really be careful for these curves that happen during stage 6.
Right. Because in stage 6, and this is inevitable, and you need to understand that this is inevitable because you've achieved so much, you've gone through all the childhood illnesses, you've gone through every education and college and expense. You've been through so much, and when it's over, when it's finally over, you kind of have this feeling, is that it? I've been taking care of other people for 40 years, and this is it. I'm going to sit in my house now alone. And so you get this strange combination of FOMO, with fear of missing out, combined with exhaustion, because remember, you're also very tired. You've been through a long ordeal called raising a family, building a career. And so you're tired. And you also wake up and say, I've missed my life. What about me? Now it's my turn.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have any distractions. When you had kids, you said, well, I can't worry about that because I have to get the kids to school, or my kids have chickenpox, or they have the flu.
Right.
Those things, those distractions are all gone now. And here you are looking at each other. And this is either a time when the is that it, that question, either begins to eat away at the marriage, or it can also be a time to honor what you've achieved, and so again, you have to work through this phase because it will be inevitable. You're going to ask that question: is that it? Isn't there more? What about me? All that's going to come up in stage 6. So be careful in this stage, because it's another time when separation and divorce, or at least unhappiness, will spike during this stage 6.
Right. Now, the last stage 7, is fulfillment, and this is where fewer than half of marriages get to this point.
Most of us aren't going to reach stage 7.
Right, but this is a time when most relationships, if they get to this point, they are pretty settled.
Right.
They're established, and they have their routines, they have their understanding of each other, they know each other very well, and so this is a time, of course, to celebrate and to relish that relationship and that comfort and stability that you have with one another. But it took a lot of work to get there. But once you're there, most relationships, or most couples in this stage, they are pretty settled and feel pretty established at that point.
Right. That's right. This is the point where you can say, we did a good job, and you can really appreciate each other and appreciate what you've done.
Yeah.
But just remember, 40 to 50% of us, marriages never get to this stage.
Yeah.
So do what you can in the previous 6 stages to make sure you get there.
Right. So as we wrap all this up, let's remember that after stage 1, stage 1 is the great part. After stage 1, everything requires work. You have to be patient. You have to be respectful. You have to be understanding. But it takes an effort to do that all along the way. You have to, keep in mind what it is about your partner that brought you together to begin with. You have to work to understand how things that you do and things that they do either connect really well, or sometimes they don't connect very well, and do something about it. Relationships take a lot of work, and those couples who are willing to do the work usually do really well.
Right.
But if
I had a friend,
both partners don't.
Yeah, if that's right. And you have to do work at each phase. You have
Absolutely.
to do different work at each phase. I had a friend who used to tell his kids, they would meet a girl and they'd get engaged or be dating, and he said, well, this is the best that your relationship will be. During the engagement, the first couple of years, he said, this is the best that it's going to be.
Right.
And I used to think he was right, but I don't think he was. It doesn't have to be the best.
Right.
It can be the best at each stage if you do it right, and it can get better.
Right.
If you really know somebody and you accept each other for who you are, that's as good as romantic love.
Right.
That kind of love is as good as romantic love. And so each phase, building a marriage is like raising a child. What you do from birth to 5 is different than what you do from ages 15 to 20.
Right.
So you do different things at each stage of a child's development, and you do different things at each stage of marriage development.
Yeah, I think if anything, that first stage, it's not that it's the best it will be, it's most often the easiest it will be, because when you're
absolutely that's perfect. It is.
Yeah.
That's the easiest phase.
Yeah.
But each stage now is going to take some work.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't give up, keep working, and communicate, talk to each other, be open about what's going on. And you know, if you're struggling, get help, talk to a therapist. There are lots of models for how to work and build, you know, that tighter, stronger relationship. But get that support you might need. So
yep.
All right. Well, that's it for today. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.